the budget process, financial reporting, and all those kind of things really helps provide a level of oversight that helps enhance internal control. And speaking of internal control, that's also a crucial part of our audit. It helps us plan the work that we do, and also gives us a chance to highlight areas of where areas might need improvement or a different look. And if you look on page 2, we just have one finding this year, and it's a carryover from the prior year. This is what I would call a small entity comment. I'll mention the segregation of duties comment that we did take out in the prior year. Preparation of financial statements is kind of along those lines. To put a financial statement together, you kind of have to have checks and balances in place, just like you do if you're separating your cash receipts, cash disbursements. But this is a lot more technical. And basically, Don is the one right now that has that financial reporting capabilities, and it's not, again, a negative reflection on city staff, but it's just sort of, again, pointing to how complicated these statements can be. Okay, now on page 3, just to follow up, and again, it's really nice to report in a smaller environment when you've reported a finding for a series of years, and to see it addressed and taken care of. We pointed out last year that there were limited segregation of duties in the payroll and investments, and it's often difficult in a small environment where you have 2-3 people involved in the process to get adequate separation. And so I think the decision bringing in additional staff helped eliminate that process, or helped eliminate that finding, and that's positive result and a good reflection on the planning and processes in place. Okay. If anything had come up during the audit process that was unusual or out of the ordinary, or difficulties that we might have, we'd point that out to you in the next couple of pages. And from my perspective, it's pretty boilerplate, which is good. We're not saying we had any issues or material audit entries or those kind of things. So again, a positive. Now, looking at the numbers, if you go to page 6, we've highlighted the general fund balance relative to the following year's budget. And over the past 5 years, you've maintained a fund balance reserve of at least 50%. Currently, at the end of 08, you're at 65.19%. Fund balance from 07 to 08 really didn't change much, about $11,000 from the prior year of an increase. But the increase in the budget brought the overall percentage down. Typical recommendation for fund balance reserve is anywhere from 35 to 50%. League of Minnesota Cities talks about that, the state auditor does, and we've talked about it. It's basically scheduling cash flow for the first 6 months. You need about a half a year's reserve to pay the bills. And so you can see you're a bit above the minimum recommendation. Okay, page 7. You had really good results comparing budget and actual in total. You can see that the revenues were slightly under $29,000, and that's mostly due to the aid on allotments that happened near the end of the year that really had no control over. The expenditure side, you were favorable, $348,000. Most of that was driven by delaying capital outlay, so unspent capital outlay. So overall, when we got to the end of the year, we had transfers out of $440,000 to other either debt funds or capital or those kind of things. We ended up increasing fund balance $10,000. So basically, treading water, holding even. Okay. Now, looking at the mix of where you get your revenue from on page 8, you're pretty typical when I look at the cities that we work with. You know, if you combine intergovernmental and taxes, you can see about 3/4 of your revenue comes from those two sources. Like I say, most cities that we work with in this proximity to the metro and the number of residents, those kind of things, this is a pretty normal mix. On the expenditure side, again, typical. 39% of your expenditures in the general fund go to public safety. That's, again, pretty standard. Anywhere from 30 to 40% is what we'd see in most other cities we'd work with. Okay, page 10. The special revenue funds, these are set up for specific purposes, things like park dedication and storm sewer, EDA, HRA, although set aside for specific activities within those funds. And really all I'd say here is that they all have positive fund balances at the end of the year and for the last couple of years. So from a tracking standpoint, they're doing what they're supposed to do, stay positive and fund their activity. On page 11, here we're showing the debt service funds. The bonds that are paid with the governmental activities are basically, I'd say, the non-water sewer bonds are presented here. We've got about $9.5 million of bonds paid in these 11 funds or so. And for the most part, all of them have positive cash and asset balances. You can see that 2001 improvement bonds has a deficit at the end of the year of $54,000. You'll make the final payment in '09, and if that's short in '09, you'll just have to transfer funds from other sources to close that out. And then the improvement bonds of 2002 have a slight cash deficit now, but overall positive assets. So as you collect assessments or whatever the receivable is out there, that'll eliminate that cash deficit. But overall, the rest of the funds, if you look at them, they're doing what they're supposed to do, accumulate sufficient cash and asset balances. Okay, and then page 12 is just a table for analysis. You can see your net debt per capita in just those governmental bonds is about $1,000, and it's been pretty consistent for the last